Okay, here we are again doing another episode for Paula Gloria of Pot Talk, further down the rabbit hole. Pot Talk, that's my show, but we're doing this for Paula because Paula's in the control room, and once again I'm here with my friend Karen Hudes, and she was a whistleblower for the World Bank, and she's been trying to educate the American people like we've been trying to do on all the problems that our country faces and how we can go about fixing these problems. And the only way that we're going to get these problems fixed is by an educated American public, and that's why we bring people like Karen Hudes, Rod Class, Constitution Man, Raja. We've brought you a whole lot of different people, all that have been trying to educate you on a lot of the shenanigans that's going on between politics, banking, and the courts in our country. And until we, the people, wake up and start demanding change and making it happen, the rest of the world is sitting and saying, what's wrong with these Americans? Are they out of their minds? But anyway, here's Karen, and I'd like to let Karen just take it away and speak as much as she wants to speak, because we want to get the word out to you.
Well, thanks so much for having me. It's been such a pleasure to have the opportunity, because I'm working together with a whole network of whistleblowers, and I'm coming from a very special place, which is, I don't know if you know the Lucille Ball show, where she's playing to be an operator, and she's taking those old-fashioned cords, and she gets them all tangled up. Do you know that episode?
Yeah, I remember that.
Okay. Well, that's what kind of a whistleblower I am. I went to Yale Law School, and I studied development economics at the University of Amsterdam. And everybody's going to know exactly how old I am when I tell you how I ended up in Amsterdam. That was when they were saying, love it or leave it, in connection with the Vietnam War.
Right.
And so I was at New York University, and between my junior and senior year, that's how I made it to Woodstock, by the way. I was at the real Woodstock. But
Me
anyway,
too.
Yeah. So they said, you seem like an old friend somehow. But
I
anyway.
am an old friend. I'm everybody's old friend.
Anyway, so I went to Amsterdam between my junior and senior year in college. And then when it came time to go to law school, because I had applied to law school, so I stayed in Amsterdam. I wrote a letter to Harvard. I said, "Dear Harvard, I'm having a good time in Amsterdam. I'll reapply." And they said, "Well, Karen, you can always reapply, but you certainly won't be readmitted." So I went to Yale instead. Believe me, it was not my loss. But anyway, I'm sorry to all the Harvard law graduates. But anyway, so getting back to why I think it's important for people to listen. It's not a joke. Law is a bedrock. It's the difference between war and peace. And the thing about the World Bank is, when it was created in 1944, if you look at the newsreels of what people thought they were doing, they really thought they were preventing World War III. They were trying to find a place where you could convene all the parties, and that's exactly what it is. People argue, they say, well, look at all the destruction that the World Bank leaves in its wake, and they also look at the history of the people who had an ulterior motive and a hidden agenda. And it's true, they did have a hidden agenda, and it's true, they did have an ulterior motive. But the fact of the matter is that if you look at the Articles of Agreement of the World Bank, and that's what that was my job for 21 years, to look at those articles. They're clean. They're there, they're a platform, and we can use them, and we can take back the Bretton Woods institutions. They're called Bretton Woods institutions because there's a ski resort in New Hampshire, which is where both the World Bank and its sister organization, the International Monetary Fund, where those two organizations were created. And so they got the countries of the world to enact into their legislation, each of them, and there were 44 countries then. Now it's 188 countries. So it's really, for all practical purposes, it's the entire world. And we can use this, this legal framework as a platform for all the people of the world, if we take the world back, and I'm telling you, there's a very good way to do that, because I went to the man who had been there during the negotiation of that treaty. His name was Aaron Brochus. He was a Dutch lawyer who, at the time, he was a young lawyer, and he was retired when I got to know him. He played the piano, I played the cello, and we used to play Beethoven duets. And he would tell me about what he had done, and he told me when Robert McNamara came to the World Bank, that was when the place went to hell in a handbasket. And he gave me the, the operation manual. So here I am, I'm sitting right in the middle of the world economy. And it's a wonderful place to be if what you're interested in is not bankers' wars. If what you're interested in is what I was interested in, what I studied in Holland. I studied development economics. So I went there clueless. I went there thinking that it was really doing what it was supposed to be doing, which is eradicating poverty. And, people say, how could you have been there for 20 years and be somebody who's really interested in eradicating poverty? But for the first 10 years, I was just sort of, curious things would happen, but I just couldn't really account for them. And I was working in the Middle East. I was working in Yemen and Jordan. And it was really fascinating. What is this woman doing working in Yemen, for heaven's sakes? And I'll tell you what I learned. I learned so much. I would go there, and over a 10-year period. And one year I was there, and it got to be dark, and I was getting into a taxi, and somebody threw rocks at my legs. And I thought, my legs aren't that bad. So after that, I wore one of these black, there's only one word for it.
Burqa.
No, my word is schmata. I would just wear it. And once I did that, all of a sudden, people were taking me seriously. And it was a revelation. But one of the things when you're working on Yemen as a woman is you see the whole society, because, it was men on one side and women on the other. But since I was the one who was there to negotiate all of the World Bank projects, that meant that I would see the whole place. And one of the things they teach you at the World Bank is how to recognize whether or not a project is failing or succeeding. And before the project, you have to say, what is it that you need to see so that you know whether a project's going to fail? And I had two indicators for whether a project was going to succeed or fail in Yemen. You would count up the number of cars in the project. If there were a lot of cars, that meant that it was a lousy project, and the only way you could get that project in that country was if you loaded it up with cars. So you added up the number of cars. If there were a lot of cars, it was a lousy project. And the other thing you did was you looked to see whether the person who was in charge of the project was talking to the people. And there was a way to find that out. In Yemen, I'm not somebody who's interested in, drugs. But if you chewed khat and you were a project leader, that meant that you would know what was going on in your project. Because in Yemen, there was a convention that if you were talking to somebody over a khat session, you could never be held responsible for what you said. They would say it was the khat talking. So if you would add up the number of cars in the project, if there were a lot of cars, it was a bad project. If the task team leader was not talking to the people, if they weren't chewing khat, then it was a lousy project. It was never going to succeed. But anyway, so you learn things. You learn. It's a wonderful job. You're going to you're invited into their country, and if you're working on the Middle East, the people are, hospitality. That's their shtick. So here's my boss. He's an Egyptian. He's turned me loose on Yemen and Jordan. And the thing about Jordan, when that problem with Syria was happening, and they were using Jordan as a landing ground, and Jordan, half of the people in Jordan are Palestinians. That's the thing about Jordan. I mean, I had a dream job. I would be working on Jordan, and then at one point, they asked me to try to free up money in Israel for a project. So I got in a taxi, and the taxi driver drove me over the Allenby Bridge.
Yeah, I don't know it, but go ahead.
That is I didn't want to have to fly to Europe and fly back. So I went over the Allenby Bridge, and I ended up in Israel. And then I talked to the people, and I said, we're going to work on a water project. What is the water project you want? And you know what they told me? They told me, you get a computer in each and every country with the same model, and let them see if they take too much water, what it's going to do to their neighbors. This is the same project that they put in Georgia and Florida, and I forget which other state was fighting over water. So they learned that the groundwater is all interconnected. Guess what? People are all interconnected. We have to learn how to live with each other. It's not so hard, especially if you don't have bankers trying to get everybody all riled up.
Right.
Yeah? So I came back with this water project that the Israeli people wanted me to do. Now, I couldn't get it approved. I didn't know why. Why couldn't I get it approved? And then, I got into more trouble because in Aden, there was a fight between North and South Yemen in Aden. And the people in South Yemen wanted there to be a project in Aden. And then the man who was in charge of the Ministry of Legal Affairs, I didn't know he knew how to speak English. All of a sudden he spoke English, and he told me that I had to go back and make sure that we had the Aden Port Project. So I went back, and the minute you tell somebody in Washington that there's corruption in a project, you get reassigned. So I got reassigned from Yemen and Jordan to the Philippines. I didn't know why I was reassigned to the Philippines. I'll tell you why I was reassigned to the Philippines. Talk about down the rabbit hole. Okay. Queen Victoria?
Yeah.
I'm not changing the subject.
Yeah.
She had a twin. His name was Talano, Prince Talano. He was autistic or something, and the people didn't want him to be king, so they left Queen Victoria to be queen, and they shipped him off to the Philippines. And this guy, Talano, he was a ne'er-do-well. He went all around the world siring children. So Yamashita, the one who buried all the gold in the Philippines, he was a son of Talano. You know who else was a son of Talano?
Who else?
Adolf Hitler.
Huh.
Yeah. Sounds like I'm dreaming. No, I'm not dreaming. The world is a lot different than people have been told that it is.
Believe me, I know that.
Okay. So anyway, there's all this gold in the world. The people in the Philippines know all about it because Prince Talano, Marcos, everybody thinks he's bad. No, he's good. He's the lawyer who took all of this gold. Where did the gold come from? It came from the colonies, and then all of the royalty put it all together. It's all together in one collateral account, and there's 1/10 of it is allocated to the United States for us to strengthen our currency. And we've got the uncut dollars. This is all what John F. Kennedy had planned. And we can just do it. We can do it because the people with legal signature authority have allocated us this gold. Our problems are not insurmountable. As a matter of fact, we've solved them. We just have to own up to them, and we have to take the crooks, and we have to say, you had it your way for a while. We're going to have it our way now.
Yeah.
It's really quite simple.
I'm ready for that.
Yes.
I'm definitely ready for that.
And by the way, the chance that we get that, do you know what the chance is? Do you want to hear?
What?
95%.
Yeah.
And the reason I can say that is because the World Bank is a knowledge bank, and a political scientist came to me in 2004, and he said, Karen, we have 5 years to to prevent World War III. And it's going to happen in the Middle East. And guess what? We did that. That was Syria.
Right.
We prevented. And now we just have to get from, this whole big, it's like a jigsaw puzzle. And all of these whistleblowers have all been bringing their little pieces. And we've got it all spread out on the table, and we've put it mostly together. And you know the piece that's missing?
I'm ready to hear.
It's for people to see that we've done this jigsaw puzzle. That's what it is. They have to see that we've done this jigsaw puzzle. That's the missing piece now.
Well, if you bring all these pieces, all these people that have the pieces to us, we will put them on television to educate the American people, so enough people know about it to bring about the change that we need to have happen.
Well, let me give you, if I were in the audience, I would want to know the proof for it. Okay, so let me tell you the email that I got this morning. Okay, it was, Karen, you're talking about a lot of gold. This is more gold than, the World Gold Council says there is. Should I take your word for it? How do I know that I should believe you? So let me tell you what I wrote this guy back. Okay.
Okay.
All right. I gave him 2 links. I gave him the link to Lord, I forget who, one of the members of Parliament made a statement in Parliament because all of a sudden a lot of money landed in the Bank of Scotland. And he wanted to know how come. So that's one person, yeah. And then who is the guy who was the postmaster? He's a 3rd-degree Mason. He's the one that talks a lot about syntax. Miller, that's his name, Miller. Okay. You'll see him talking about all this gold. All right? Now, here's the best part. I started getting emails from this fellow named Raymond Bonnell, who's he's a man who's in charge of some company, but if you look him up on Google, it's also Hong Kong Shanghai Bank. He's a muckety-muck. And he's sending me all these emails about the fact that he thinks he's got the right to the gold. He says, I'm representing the Philippine people, and I have the right to the gold. And so I wrote back to him, and I said, with all due respect, Raymond, I don't think you have the right to the gold. I think you might have tried to intimidate a lot of people in the Philippines with a typhoon, and I don't know why that typhoon happened. It's bigger than any storm that ever hit anywhere. I think, I don't agree with you. So you'll see correspondence between me and this guy. Now, is that guy hallucinating? Why would he be writing me about gold? Oh, there's another thing you can look at. The World Court decided to give gold to a fellow named Hendo Henderson to give for projects. I found out about this. I said, why do you think you're giving projects to people? Who the heck are you? I didn't say that, but I said something else. And you know what he said to me? I said, I'd like to see those projects. He never sent me any of the projects. He said, would you like to do a project? I said, no, I don't want to do a project. Forget it. I can, give you that correspondence. So there are a lot of reasons why people think there's gold. If there isn't gold, why would they be writing all of these things to me? I'm not making this up.
No, I've actually heard from quite a few people about, I don't know, do you know about the Dragon family gold?
I'll tell you why I'm laughing. All right, people are threatening to sue me, so I'll be a little more circumspect than I'd otherwise like to be. And for people who Google me, they'll see people that like to talk about the Dragon family. There is no Dragon family. There is no Dragon family. I'm sorry to say. Those are the banksters that are coming from Asia. That's not a Dragon family.
Okay. I've just heard. I don't know enough about it. I've just heard a little here and there, and I've actually been trying to look into it and find out the facts on it. which I will actually I do a lot more research because I've been trying to follow it, and I know a little about Keating and Keenan.
That's one of the ones that's been threatening that they'll sue me.
So I've been, we stay a little abreast of what's going on in the world, me and Paula, and who's making what moves on what.
Okay, there's another way that you can find out that all this gold is. There's an improbable agency called the Office of International Treasury Control. So if you Google them, you'll see that that group thinks they have something to do with all the world's gold. That group, believe me, they've just invented themselves. They wrote a letter to me too. They wrote a letter and they said, we're sending you this package. I wrote them back and I said, well, with all due respect, do I have any obligation to keep this secret? Oh, yes, you do. I said, well, then I'm not opening it. I said, because I don't want anybody saying that I don't have a right to say anything. Right. I don't want any obligation. I didn't go there.
Right.
And plus, if you look at the Office of International Treasury Control, you'll see that there's a guy named Russell Monk in the U.S. Treasury Department that signed a letter saying to the banks, oh, by the way, bank, just don't worry if you're breaking all the laws when you follow what the Office of International Treasury Control tells you to do. I will not blame you for it. And I know this guy, Russell Monk, because when I was in the World Bank legal department, I kept writing to him. I wrote him for about 6 years, trying to get him to do what was right under the law. And he just, ignored me. And the other thing about the Treasury Department is, when Germany asked for its gold back, and the Federal Reserve said, we'll give it to you in 7 years, which is an act of war. The Treasury Office of Inspector General wrote a very bogus audit of the gold. They said, we have looked at the books describing the schedule where the gold is listed, and we think that schedule looks okay. I mean, you look at the gold, you don't look at the schedule. I mean, that was a really wacky thing that they wrote. I don't know what they thought they were doing. Anyway, the whole thing is really an embarrassment. And the thing about the embarrassment, it's more than an embarrassment, because we're now looking at our credit rating going down. And this is very serious stuff. You don't want your credit rating to go down when you're a country, because what can I say? It's your stature in the world. We don't want to be taking the elevator down to the basement as a country, and we shouldn't. And we don't need to. We just need to fire the Federal Reserve. And it's very easy to do, by the way. It's very easy to do. We should do it. There are two ways to do it. We can do it the way that they snuck in, which is by stealth. We can issue a coin worth the national debt, and just, if you read your Constitution, they're unconstitutional to begin with. We just issue a coin saying, that's our debt. You go, you hustle away. That's one way we can do it. I don't know if you know that song, the many ways to say goodbye, but that, if we could find that, that's what I would like to play now. Yeah. We don't need them. They're certainly not adding much to our mix.
No, I've been saying that on many of my shows, that we have to get rid of the Federal Reserve, and I think that it's possible that since they came in unconstitutionally, we could just take them out and say, well, wait a minute, they're an unconstitutional entity. First of all, when the Constitution was made, all authority was allocated. We, the people, gave the president certain authority. We, the people, gave Congress certain authority. We, the people, gave the Senate and the judiciary certain authority. Now, according to the law, authority that's been delegated cannot be redelegated. So if we said we delegate the authority to Congress to coin money and to control the money for the people, When Congress redelegated that authority, Congress didn't have the constitutional authority to redelegate it.
Well, we're in a little bit of a bind. I'll tell you why we're in a bind, because the judges in the Supreme Court seem to think that they have the right to interpret the Constitution. And let me tell you, those guys there
are criminals.
Well, I'm not going to say that they're criminals, but let me give you a little story about what happened in one case. Every year, the French are allowed to state whatever it is that they think would be interesting to have in something called the Raymond Aron Lecture. So last December, that reminds me, I should see what they're doing for this Raymond Aron Lecture. But in any event, last Raymond Aron Lecture, they had Justice Breyer come, and they were talking about the internationalization of law. So after the lecture, I went up, and I was speaking to the French ambassador for a while, talking about these problems. And Justice Breyer was a little curious to see who's this lady talking to the ambassador. So, and at the end of my conversation, I got the name of the chief of staff in the embassy, and I've been keeping them informed. I keep all of the embassies informed. I write them, regularly. Sometimes I send them letters, sometimes I send them emails. But anyway, so then I started keeping Justice Breyer informed. And then when 188 ministers of finance settled my lawsuit. Why did they settle my lawsuit? For the simple reason that they knew that I had had a conversation with them in 2009, which is when I said to the board, I said, with all this corruption going on, like Enron, it's Enron inside the World Bank. I said, you cannot delegate to the president of the World Bank anymore. You have got to take back your authority, because they had a rule. It was an unwritten rule. And then they gave a little memo on it, which said that we are interpreting the power of the board, that the board is going to sit back and wait for the president to propose something, and then the board's going to vote it up or down. And I wrote a memo saying, that memo doesn't make any more sense because there's too much corruption. It's rescinded. And that was the day I got locked out of the World Bank. They wouldn't let me in anymore. They had no right to lock me out, but they locked me out. Okay, so that was when I was able to sue, because, there's periods that you're allowed to sue. And once they locked me out of the World Bank, that was an act, and I had 90 days to bring a lawsuit. So that's when I brought the lawsuit. But anyway, so getting back to this Raymond Aron lecture. Anyway, so the board knew me. Oh, let me tell you one of the reasons that the board liked me. Do you remember what happened to the governor of New York, Eliot Spitzer?
Yeah.
And when they threw him out?
Yeah. Okay.
This is why we needed to have the taping for the third one. I saved the best for the last. Okay. You ready? You ready for this one? Okay. There was a president of the World Bank, Paul Wolfowitz.
Yeah.
He came to the World Bank, and he had a girlfriend who was working at the World Bank, Shaha Riza. And he gave Shaha a big raise of like 35%. So the board fired him. And there was a whole thing about whether they could fire him or not. You could imagine the powers that be didn't want their guy fired.
Right.
Yeah? So anyway, but they fired him. But so the board members who had gone to that same house of establishment, the New York Madam,
right,
that Eliot Spitzer, were told that this information was going to be made public if they fired Paul Wolfowitz. How did I find this out? Because I studied economics in Holland, and I happened to be in Holland when the man who represented the Dutch government went on public in Dutch in a Dutch newspaper. And then the next day, there's a guy named Ad Melkert, and he had been the predecessor, and he was then at the UNDP. And so they asked Ad on a television program. They said, Ad, did you have the same problem? And Ad said, well, I'm a boring guy. He said, but I knew other members of the board that were having these problems. He said, and it wasn't just whether they went to the New York Madam, it's whether they spent money that made them vulnerable. Now, you know about how angry everybody is that we've got this problem the National Security Agency and blackmailing people.
Right.
Yeah, well, they knew from this. Anyway, so what did I do when I had this information? I did a couple of things. I wrote a letter to the dean of the Yale Law School. I said, they've lost their mind. I said, they're blackmailing ambassadors because they want Paul Wolfowitz to be able to give a big pay raise to his girlfriend.
Yeah.
I said, is this in our national security? Not that we're ever supposed to blackmail ambassadors, but this makes no sense whatsoever. It's certainly not in the national security interest. And especially because, I had this power transition model which predicted that the U.S. was going to lose its leadership. So I was apoplectic. I went back to Washington. By that time, I'd been dealing with the Senate Committee on Foreign Relations, which at that point, who was the chair? It was Joe Biden. Who were the two junior senators? Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama. And do you know what happened? I mean, you know how these guys would play hardball. I had been dealing with Senator Grassley's guy. And Senator Grassley's guy said, you have to go to Hillary and Obama on this. So, of course, I did. All right. And so, ultimately...
And, of course, they did nothing.
Wait a minute. So, I have the correspondence for all of this. Yeah, I've got the correspondence for... So, what did I do? I took... Yeah, I mean, this is really... The cover-up has been really... It just makes it a better story later. But anyway, so what did I do? I went to the Senate Committee on Foreign Relations, and I said, they're blackmailing all the ambassadors. What on earth do they think they're doing? So they said, well, go to Kenneth Peele in the Treasury Department. So I did go to Kenneth Peele in the Treasury Department. I ultimately went to Barbara Mikulski in the Senate Committee on on Intelligence, the Select Committee on Intelligence, and I said, we've got to solve this problem. What kind of intelligence agencies are we having here? Is there any oversight in Congress?
No.
Let's go back to this Syria non-event.
Right.
Okay. One of the things that you have when this cover-up has dragged on the way it has is I've been writing all this correspondence. So you have a very accurate picture of who's doing what to whom. And there's something called the National Advisory Council on International Monetary and Financial Policies. Who's on it? It's chaired by the Secretary of the Treasury. It's got the chairman of the Fed on it. So I've been writing Ben Bernanke, these letters to the NAC. And at a certain point when the National Advisory Council didn't solve the problem, I said, well, since the NAC couldn't be bothered, I'm asking them to solve the insider trading of the Federal Reserve, which when you're buying and selling stock in the capital markets, you should see how many times I've gone to the SEC and documented what kind of whistleblower protection they have, all right? So I have got accurate pictures of all what you call state capture. The fact that Congress is not doing its job. I have written, I don't even want to begin to tell you how many letters I've written to Joe Biden on this. Or his son, because his son is supposed to be protecting, what's Biden, the Attorney General? He's supposed to be protecting the investors, the ones who hold World Bank
Joe
bonds.
Biden's the vice president.
He's got a son, Bo Biden is in Delaware. What I have done is I have been a sting operation for the entire state and federal governments. I have documented it from A to Z. That's what I've got. That's people, you've got it. You're welcome to it. You go to my website, you'll get 1/3 of the stuff. Yeah, that's what it is. That's what it is. And we're just going to clean it up. And all of the countries of the world, when the NAC didn't answer me, I wrote them like the 4th letter, and they didn't answer me. I said, you know what? I said, you're really not responding. I'm just going to have to forward all of this to the 188 countries. And then I did. And I've been writing them back and forth, and that's what I've been doing these last 10 years. It's all perfectly documented. That's what I learned how to do, and I've done it. That's where we are.
Yeah.
So we're solving the problem.
Well, you should get all this documentation in as many hands as you can.
Oh, I have.
Oh, okay.
What do you think?
Yeah.
And that's why I know we've got this coalition. Because they've got it. There's nowhere, I mean, just think of a fig leaf that came off. This country is standing in front of the world with no fig leaf.
Right.
It's all hanging out, folks. And what's hanging out now, in case you haven't figured it out, is whether the American people can be bothered to do their job as citizens. That's where we are. I have documented the malfunctioning of every single entity in this country, and now I am documenting the malperformance of its polity.
Yeah. Well, hopefully the American people are going to wake up and bring about a change in this country.
With this documentary that I've got, it's not hopefully, because you know what's going to happen if they don't?
Collapse.
No.
What?
They will be the laughing stock in history of the world forever. That's what they'll be. Is that what they want to be? No, they don't want to be that. They won't be that. We won't let them be that.
Yeah.
We will go to each and every house and we will say, this is what you are and this is what your responsibility is. I have documented the non-performance of each and every organ of this country. And I am not going to take the malperformance of its citizenry. You're on notice.
Good. I'm for that.
I am a nag.
Yeah,
That's what I've done to everybody else. I'm doing to the citizenry now. I didn't know what I was going to do. That's what I'm going to do.
Well, that's what we've been doing. We've been on telling the American people, get off your butts, get educated, and get active, get doing something. You know, it's time for the American people to take their country back. If we don't take it back, then we have no one to blame when the shit hits the fan.
It has hit the fan. It has hit the fan.
Right. Well, when you think about 14.5 million people have been foreclosed on in this country, and that's 14.5 million homes and families that have been put on the street by the banking fraud. So, yeah, the shit has hit the fan.
But, I mean, I can say it in a strident way, but let me take it from a different angle, which I think is much more effective. And that is to say that people have really been victimized.
Yeah.
Their press has been taken over so that they weren't given the information that they needed. Their children have been
miseducated.
Not just that, but if you start to see about what the health impacts are
right.
of all of these terrible things that they've been on the receiving end for, we are just we're just a shadow of who we could be because we have been so victimized. And we don't have to be. That's just the whole point about it. We have such a bright, vibrant future waiting for us because, I mean, the one thing I have seen, and working with whistleblowers, let's hearken back to Anthony Shields. People are resilient. I mean, they do fight back in just the beautiful ways that you would expect. I mean, there isn't a day that I'm not grateful for all of the help I'm getting from other whistleblowers. And I mean, we are taking back our country. I haven't got the slightest doubt about the American people, actually.
Well, I don't know. I have faith in the American people. But whether they're, they've been sheep for so long. That's the part that scares me. They've allowed themselves to be sheep for so long, and unless they throw off the sheepskin and become lions, I fear for our country. That's my opinion.
Okay, what they say about fools rush in where angels fear to tread.
Yeah.
I'm gonna do that.
Yeah, well, that's good.
Okay. Let's talk.
I do that myself.
Let's talk about how best to approach it, though. I may be a fool, but at least I'd like to be able to get out of my own booby traps that I set. So let me start out by saying I'll just talk about myself. That's the best way to do it.
Okay.
The first thing is I don't think people should talk about religion. I think people should act religion.
Right.
Yeah?
Right.
Okay. So when I was a little kid, I don't know how old I was. I got very, very angry at my father because he wasn't listening to me. Do you know what I did?
No.
I hit him where I could just barely reach, and as hard as I could. That's who I was as a little kid. But the other thing, and my father forgave me, and he was a grocer, and he took me to his store, and I used to be the checkout kid, and I did that for many, many years. And then when I was 14, I went and got my own, paying job. I was in a large grocery store, and I was in their bakery, and I was running the donut machine. You know what I ended up doing? The lady who I was working with was, she was old. I don't know how old she was. She probably wasn't that old, but I was a little kid. Anyway, they tried to fire her. So I unionized the place. That was who I was. And then, one day we had a snow day in school, and I started teaching the class because the teacher couldn't get there. And my mother was the principal of an elementary school. And anyway, so I was just brought up to think that I was somebody who could make a contribution. And then when I hit NYU as an undergraduate, there was no place to do sports, so I took up fencing. I became captain of the NYU fencing team. And NYU fencers were fierce because we had a Hungarian fencing coach who taught us, who drilled into us that if, you've never heard noise, like noise coming from your Hungarian fencing coach when he's attacking you. So you learn as a reflex that if somebody's attacking you with a lot of noise, you focus because that's your chance. When they're attacking, they can't defend.
Right.
You want them to attack. You welcome the attack. So I became, a fencer. And so when Jim Wolfenson was a fencer and he thought he was a cellist, well, I haven't finished fencing with him.
Well, that's good. Hopefully, we can have you back at other times in the future. That would be really nice. I have a couple more questions that I would like to. I have also been informed that the banks sold the notes on Wall Street by pooling them, then collapsed these pooled trusts, which depleted the retirement funds of many of American citizens. If the banks sold the notes on Wall Street, how is it possible that the banks now could repossess the homes which they had already sold their claim to on Wall Street?
We're talking about the bad documentation. We're talking about MERS. We're talking about the fact of the matter is this isn't possible. If you don't have an original signed note, you have no way to repossess a house. The fact of the matter is the banks are grabbing back the collateral, not because it's legal, because it's not. They're doing it because they have to. Their finances are in a shambles. They've been just, what can I say? Look at the derivatives markets. Look at what they're paying their employees. No, they have no money, and they need to grab the assets. It's just a grab, an illegal grab. It's totally, and we've already talked about the judiciary as being totally complicit in this fabrication that calls itself a legal system. I mean, as a lawyer, let me tell you that I've been writing the American Bar Association about all of this regularly.
Yeah.
The lawyers are on notice. It's not going to, once we resolve these problems, the legal profession is going to be in for a very rude awakening. They have not been, what can I say? They've been thieves.
Yeah.
They've been thick as thieves.
Yeah. Well, a lot of the fights that we've been having, me and Paula have been taking a stand for a lot of the nonviolent people that are in jail for victimless crimes. I mean, there's no victim, but yet they've made up crimes and they've locked up people. And the other is about all these foreclosures, all these people who've lost their homes, lost their property, basically illegally. And right now, me and Paula are actually fighting her apartment. They're trying to take Paula's co-op apartment. And listen to this. We as Chase Bank said they wanted to take it. We said, well, show us the note with the wedding signature. For 2 years, we wrote them letters saying, show us the note, show us the note, show us the note. They kept writing back letters, we're looking for the note, we're looking for the note, we're looking for the note. Then we find out that this guy, Louis Zazzarino, says, I bought your apartment on the courthouse steps, and you got a 10-day notice to get out, right? So we said, no way. You wouldn't, how did you do it? And so now he gives us our 10-day notice. Then we're supposed to go into housing court, and we go into housing court. And of course, I've been through a lot of court cases, so I know how to deal with courts pretty good. And first thing we always go in, and everybody should remember this: when you go in, always say, "I do not understand how this is happening." As long as you don't understand, it makes it very hard for them to go further with the case. And this judge kind of saw that me and Paula, and we also said we wanted the lawyer Mirandized because he was going to put in fraudulent evidence and commit felonies, and the judge didn't want to go there. So, and then she said, well, that the landlord-tenant court can't hear cases of non-judicial foreclosures on co-ops. So then the lawyer said, well, I want to fill in paperwork to argue with that. And she actually cited a higher court ruling saying that court couldn't hear that case, Paula's case and my case, for this because it was a non-judicial foreclosure. So now we're in the process of putting in. I fight all my cases myself. I've fought quite a few, because I learned a long time ago. Forget lawyers, they just sell you down the river. But anyway, so we're putting in now a motion saying we want this dismissed. This court can't hear it. You already cited the fact, but she gave him 60 days to answer, and hopefully we're hoping that he's going to take it, if he can't have it in that court, into the Supreme Court, because then we can now say, well, wait a minute, the bank never had standing to sell it in the first place, since they could never produce the note with the wedding signature, and we've got documents from 2 years of saying, produce the note, produce the note, produce the note, and they kept saying, we're looking for it, we're looking for it, we're looking for it. And so that's one of the cases that we're involved in right now. I've also fought a bunch of cases where they arrested me for marijuana, for growing, and I pretty much beat that without a lawyer. And then they came in again on me and my son without a warrant, because they're out to get me. I do these TV shows and I talk about how the criminality of the judges and the legal system, and so and we beat that. And then one day, me and Paula, after we had done a show on the bank fraud, where we had Raja testify, we were driving home, and the police pulled us over. A cop pulled us over, and not only arrested us. I had some hash oil at the time. Paula was taken as medicine because she had a lump in her breast. And for you people out there that don't know, it's proven fact that THC, the extracted oil from marijuana, cures cancer, and you can look up "Run from the Cure" on the internet, and you'll see multiple cases, and we've done a lot of shows on that, so a lot of our audience already knows about that. And the cop got me out of the car and said, I had a taillight out. He pulled us over for a taillight out, and then he said, could you go sit in my car? I said, well, if I'm not under arrest, I'm not going and sitting in your car. And a few times it went back and forth, and I said, if I'm not under arrest, I'm not sitting in the back of your car. Then he handcuffed me and Paula was taping it with her tape recorder, right? And she said, "I'm taping it." And it was great because he said, "That's okay. I have a camera in the car and I'm recording it all too," which was great. Then he went and told Paula to get out of the car, right? Because he hadn't searched it yet. Before he found any drugs, he arrested both me and Paula. And he slammed, when Paula didn't want to get out of the car, he dragged her violently out of the car, slammed her on the hood of the car. Yeah, really rough. I was handcuffed. I couldn't do nothing about it. And I was locked in the police car. And then he brought her around the side. And unfortunately, this wasn't on the video because the video was straight out the front of his car. This cop actually picked her up off her feet and threw her head first into me in the back seat of the car. And then we went to court, and the judge there knew that first they said we were charged with felonies. Each time they did the same thing with me because I know quite a bit about law myself, about criminal law. It always starts out, well, you're charged with felonies, and then I fight them a while, and I put in my paperwork, and then they go, well, how about we drop it down to a misdemeanor? And I go, no. And then they say, well, okay, how about we drop it down to a possession of a joint and a $100 fine? And I say no. And eventually I get, on most of them we got up, but on Paul and me, they found us guilty because if they didn't find us guilty, we could go after the cop. So they found us guilty. Then we tried to appeal it to the criminal judge from the first trial that denied us due process. And he refused to even hear the appeal from a lower court and denied us that. Then I was driving then I said, okay, and I drove with no license, no registration, no insurance, all that, and said, well, I don't know if you know that we have a right to drive without actually we have a right to travel, not drive, because you got to use the right words. And I was fighting that, and then they found me guilty on that, but I actually knew the law, and I knew that all my paperwork was good, and that a higher court, I don't know because the higher courts are even corrupt, but I was sure that in the higher court I would win. But it went before that same judge again, and they just never got back. They just denied me my appeal. They just ignore it like it never happened. The courts up in Ulster County, where I am, are so corrupt. It's unbelievable. The judges do what they want. On the one where they came in with no warrant, they found marijuana on the supposed smell of marijuana. The cop came to our door saying he was looking for a car that someone was using that wasn't even the right building. And then he said he smelt marijuana. I asked my son, I want to come in, and my son said, no, you need a warrant. He forced his way in, found some marijuana, which they know me up there. They know I'm an advocate. And so then the local judge, the same SWAT team that had busted me before went to the local judge, and to get the warrant, they said one thing, and they told the judge, we need a warrant, after they had already been in and searched the house and found the drugs, and we were under arrest. He gave a warrant. Now, when we went before that judge, I said to him, you're just bringing me here for marijuana, but you signed a warrant after the fact, and that's illegal, right? And he huffed and puffed and said, well, we're going to bring this to trial, and that's when it started from a felony down to a misdemeanor. And then we just accept a joint, and then they were going to, there's 3 letters for it. I forget what it's called, but dismissed contemplating contemplating dismissal. And I said, no, that's not acceptable either. I want this dismissed because everything the cops did was illegal. ACD, that's it. Paula told me ACD. They wanted to charge us with contemplating dismissal, right? And so anyway, then he said, well, he slammed the gavel down and said, okay, then this is going to go to trial in 30 days. And he slammed the trial back. I said, okay. And we never heard from him again. They just, So these people, if you really fight them, and especially if you know the law like we do, you can beat them. And anyway, I got off the subject. I would rather go back to what you're doing. But our courts are so corrupt, it's unbelievable.
I mean, we should stick with talking about the courts, because if we don't have functional courts, how can we have a decent credit rating? And if we don't have a decent credit rating, this is going to really impact us as a country. So no, there's nowhere to go but confront the problem, take the bull by the horns, and fix it. Yeah. Okay.
We got 3 minutes. Anything you want to finish up with? Any last? I'll give it to you to tell the people.
Well, it's just that we've got a lot of opportunities here. Just like my Hungarian fencing coach. This is a country that is under attack. It's under attack from a very recognizable opponent. We haven't really named who the opponent is. It's the English, who have not stopped colonizing us, and of course the English themselves have been victimized by the Vatican. So we're caught in the matrix, and we've got we've got to do what Joe has been doing, and just stand up for ourselves.
Right.
We have to stand up for ourselves.
And when you say the English, it's actually London, right?
Yes.
It's London. We do know that. It's not all the English people, or even England. England's being fleeced by London, too.
Yesterday I was on the radio with Ireland. Yeah.
Who's also being fleeced by London.
I mean, I guess the fact of the matter is that people ought to be aware that every group of citizens is now standing up and saying this is not going to continue, because it really can't. We know exactly what's going on. We know it, and we're just not going to accept it any longer.
Yeah, and that's what we need. More people like Karen to stand up, and more people like me and Paula, and all you people out there in television land, it's your turn. So get off your butts and go out and do something. And I guess this is Joe Barton saying goodbye for Pot Talk. For Further Down the Rabbit Hole. Pot Talk's my show. This is Paula's show. But I'm filling in for her because she's in the control room. And she can do that, and I can't do that. So here I am filling in for her. And have a good day, and we'll see you next time.